So with that, I'll let Neil get us started.
Thank you, Ann. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. This has been a very exciting series of webinars about this particular topic because of what's going on out in the industry with not only the Microsoft announcement, but different Microsoft positioning of, kind of their view of what customers should do. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through as well. The basic piece here stems from an announcement they made in July for customers who are using Exchange Unified Messaging online and had their own PBXs on premise, so they weren't using the Microsoft telephony pieces. They supported something called hybrid unified messaging, and basically it lets you connect your on-site PBX up into the Microsoft cloud to deposit voice messages. And they've been supporting that for a number of years. And for whatever reason, they decided they don't want to do that anymore. So in July of last year, they sent out an announcement telling everyone we're going to get rid of that. So those of you that are using that need to go find something else. And then they sent out a little message that said, here's some of your options, etc. And we'll look at those options in a second. So a year for a large enterprise to replace or reprogram a large portion of their environment is not a lot of warning. And so Ann and I were talking before the webinar, people seem to fall into two groups. A lot of them jumped on it right away, and knowing how long it takes to get budget and all of that. And now in the last couple of months, we're getting the surprised customers who just figured out what they have to do, and July seems very, very close for them. So we're doing this particular webinar a couple of times every now and then just to make sure that we can give those customers a chance to look at our options for solving this problem. And we're a pretty logical person to look at in terms of if you're talking about unified messaging, and you tend to look at us anyway. We've been around with our product longer than anybody else has a product on the market, and we have hundreds of thousands of users, probably millions of users worldwide, and we are recognized as a leader in the unified messaging space. And not just unified messaging, but unified communications in the large enterprise. We started as a small enterprise customer doing branch offices when we were a very young company, but we quickly figured out with the consolidation that was starting to take place even 20 years ago that the goal really had to be to sit in the large enterprise. And the large enterprise is a very complex thing. No two look alike. Even the goals within them tend to vary quite a bit. But we have been focusing in this space. We have the references to prove it, and the product basically has been engineered for that space. So if you kind of look historically, we've been doing this a long time and slowly grown over the years from primarily a voicemail company into a call management company, and now into more of a full unified communications company. We're not going to talk about all the different things we do. We don't have time in a webinar like this. We have plenty of other webinars if you want to get some more information on that, or you can always contact one of our dealers or ourselves directly. What we're going to focus on today are those particular customers who are using Exchange UM online. And there's two architectures here that you'll see, or you'll have if you're one of the customers that has this. And basically, there's an on-site phone system, and it's connected to Exchange Online through a number of different methods. One is a gateway. There's some SIP kind of gateways that can be used, and then what that does is it converts the traditional signaling from the telephone system, like E1, T1, that type of thing, into data, into SIP and RTP, and then it routes them out typically over a session border controller on site, through a firewall, out through the internet, and then onto the Microsoft hosting site where it connects to an SBC there, a session border controller that they host, and then that allows the connection into the Exchange UM server. So the way this works is someone calls that PBX on site, rings a phone, the user doesn't answer, the phone forwards through the media gateway, through the data link, through the SBC at Microsoft, and that entire conversation happens on the Microsoft site. In other words, Microsoft Exchange UM answers that call, plays the user's greeting, gives the caller the options, and then typically records the message. The other architecture is very similar. Some manufacturers actually did the work to make their SIP trunks directly compatible without the need of a gateway. But it's the same process. The call goes through from the SIP trunk to the on-site SBC through the data network into the Exchange server. In both of these, the entire call happens across the network, which means there's quite a bit of bandwidth issues you have to deal with, and there's also a reliability issue. If there's something wrong in that data network, then those calls don't go through, and the customer's experience, the caller's experience, ring no answer. So what Microsoft said in their announcement is, we don't want to support these kind of border controllers anymore. Well, that's just a fancy way of saying we don't want to support customers with on-site PBXs, because the border control is just one little element in it. And exactly why they're doing this, I think, is certainly open to interpretation, but basically they would like to push people away from traditional PBXs and to use one of their PBXs. And we'll look at that when we look at the options that they suggest. So the challenge here, of course, is if you have that set up where you're using your on-site PBX with Exchange Online, come July, you can't do that anymore. Whether it's through a gateway or direct SIP access, that will not be supported. So now you have to go find another option. And Microsoft was, thought they'd be very helpful, and they pointed out 4 options. The first option, and this is really their desire, is get rid of your traditional PBX and use one of Microsoft's PBXs. Now, Microsoft's PBXs, the category is a little soft and shiny sometimes in terms of what they tell you they're doing. But when they made this announcement, they said, move to the Cloud PBX. The Cloud PBX was Microsoft's hosted PBX that you could get along with the subscription to Office 365. And it was a very new PBX. It was very low in features. It didn't have good connectivity toolkits. So there's a lot of things missing that you simply would have had to do without. And there was very little migration to their Cloud PBX. Now their story is a little different. They've already said, no, the Cloud PBX will go away. We're going to move that functionality into Teams, their new groupware kind of package, but it's not really ready yet. So option 1 is kind of difficult for anybody to take seriously, considering by July, when the older way of working ceases to be supported, there isn't really a good migration path to anything Microsoft has that's going to replace an enterprise PBX. Maybe eventually they can with their Teams, but right now it doesn't really work. Option 2 for Microsoft says, get rid of your on-site PBX and put our on-site PBX into play. So go ahead and enable Skype for Business Enterprise on-site and use that as your PBX. We will allow that PBX on-site to connect up into Exchange Online. But what that means, if you aren't a Skype user already, is the purchase of quite a bit of expensive licensing, deployment of hardware, and you're kind of committing to a long-term course with Microsoft. They say option 3 is you can go ahead and put a partial implementation of Skype for Business on-site, and certain third parties are using gateways to connect to that on-site Skype for Business deployment, and then we will allow that portion of Skype you have on your enterprise to connect up. So those first 3 options are sort of, Microsoft's way of saying get rid of what you have and come with us one way or another. The 4th option, they say just go somewhere else for voicemail. And if you're already using Office 365 and you have your messages there, retraining all your users and doing that option number 4, you have to really look carefully at that. We are going to look carefully at that because we have a way to do that we think is going to make most people pretty happy. We're also going to look a little bit at option 3. If you really have a partial Skype for Business deployment on site, we can connect to that just like some of those other companies can. But we think option 4 is probably the one that most customers will find easiest to deploy and the least disruptive. So in the area of unified messaging, this is not a new area for us. It's not like we said, okay, let's get into this business because here's a big opportunity. You will find a number of the option 3 providers made brand new product and got into a market they really don't know that much about, and you could be the first customer to ever deploy their product. We have hundreds of thousands of users using what we're going to talk about as option 4 here. It's just something we've been doing longer than anyone else, and we're pretty comfortable having any conversation about unified messaging you want to have. Our system is the most flexible. Most industry analysts, if you talk to them, they will say, yeah, the CXE product, AVST's product, is the best one for doing unified messaging in the enterprise. We've been doing it longer. We are more flexible in how we connect. We connect to any PBX on site. So if you move in our direction, no matter what you do for your telephony infrastructure, our piece can stay in place. And of course, we have a full range of features. We're not going to talk about all the features for unified messaging in this webinar. Again, we don't have time to do that, plus cover this specific feature that we want to get to. But what we really want to make sure you understand is how we would do option 4. So if you have a PBX and you want to keep that PBX, then we think the best thing for you to do is to go ahead and put in our CXE product. It's an on-site server. It's a full call processing system, much more feature-rich than what you currently have if you're using Office 365. And we'll kind of touch on that a little bit. But the architecture is quite a bit different. Not different in a bad way, different in a very good way. So if you look at the traditional option 3 way of hooking things up, they say buy somebody's third-party product. TE AnyNode, Audio Codes, XUM are both 2 brand new products that you could put in, and they would allow you to connect through gateways and deposit the messages into the user's Exchange inbox. And they do that sort of in the same fashion as was supported by Microsoft before, in the sense that the phone call is what goes across the network. Microsoft Exchange continues to answer that call, record the message, and offer its feature set. The difference here is you have to put an on-premise Skype for Business partial implementation in place. You have to license all your users for that, and it becomes very expensive and just kind of a little bit contrived. We do it different. Because our component is on site, it actually takes the place of Exchange in the sense that we answer the phone calls locally on site. We offer the full range of features that we have, talk to the users, record the messages, and then just the messages are moved across the network up into the Exchange server. The users still get their messages in their Office 365 Outlook inbox. There's no difference there. The difference is we're doing all the heavy lifting on site, which means reduced bandwidth needs, greatly reduced bandwidth needs, since we're only moving this, instead of having a 4-minute conversation that I have to host across that network, and maybe, dozens of those at a time, I'm simply moving little 300K messages back and forth. And that makes it a lot easier to deploy. Plus, if the network goes down, you don't lose any functionality. CXE will still take all those messages. It can't put them into your email, but users can still get to them over the phone. They'll still get message waiting indicators about them. All of that functionality still works. So we think in terms of all the options for this, this is the best one. You're going to find it extremely price competitive. You're going to find from a reliability point of view, it offers more. From a bandwidth needs, it reduces your need for heavier bandwidth. From the ability to do more than what you're already doing with Office 365, you're going to find all of that with this option. So we don't care what your PBX is now or what you're doing in the future, because our system will move to whatever PBX, premise or cloud, that you decide to use. We've also worked with Microsoft and figured out a way for us to let the users continue to use the Outlook forms they're already using. So if you're a user today, you know that when you open up a voice message, it looks different than a traditional email message, because there's a custom form that's supplied with Outlook that recognizes that as a voice message, and it gives you the player bar and the various tools. We can set up our system such that when we deposit the messages into Exchange Online, we mark it as the same message class as Outlook, as Exchange uses, such that that message will have the exact same look and feel, close to the same exact functionality, although there'll be a few small differences. For, the ability to open the message, look at it, play it over your speakers on your phone, forward it, delete it, drag it to a folder, all that remains unchanged. Same player preview, everything. The ability to play the message over the telephone, controlling it from your Outlook form, won't be there. That's the one thing that's going to be missing. And then from the telephone access point of view, when you call in over the phone, you won't be calling into Exchange anymore. You'll be calling into our product, and there'll be some slight differences. The telephone user interface will be slightly different, although we have one that's very, very similar. And the user management tools are going to be different. So there'll be some differences, but nothing so critical that on that first day that you switch over, users will have a real panic. It'll be a very smooth transition. On top of that, if we have conversations with you, we will talk about all the things we do that go far beyond what Exchange does in terms of call processing. And whether it's speech automated attendant being more flexible and having more options, whether it's personal call routing that knows how to route your calls to wherever you are, whatever device you're using, based on your calendar, your Skype status, and your physical location, those kind of things come along with our product. So hopefully if you have an interest in this, you'll have a chance to have a conversation about more of that. And if you're already looking possibly at moving to Skype over time, but you just can't do it in this before January or July timeframe, keep in mind we are the only other call processing system that fully integrates to Skype for Business. So if you go to Skype for Business, you can continue to use everything that you've come to love with the CXE system. We've been working with integrating with Skype for Business longer than anyone else. We get referrals from Microsoft all the time where users are putting in Skype for Business but don't want to store their messages in Exchange. And for that, there's no option with for Exchange, but you can use our system to do that. So it's been very, very popular kind of talking with Microsoft and supporting that. We have a very strong relationship with Microsoft. And we looked out years ago at where everything was going in terms of unified communications and realized that we really had to understand the Microsoft environment. We run on Microsoft servers, we connect to Microsoft Groupware, we really have a strong focus on the Microsoft practice. We're one of the few dealers in the country that has 2 gold partner statuses, one in communications and one in messaging. We felt that was a necessary thing for the way that we're bridging both of those pieces. So if you're thinking in terms of looking at a solution, particularly if you're trying to reach it by July, now is the time to have conversations. And understanding that as well as the management problems with doing this in that time frame, there are budget problems where you probably didn't have an item in your budget for an unknown migration away from the Microsoft product. We have a very nice incentive package to ease that migration in terms of, lowering the price of our core system, giving away the unified messaging licenses. It makes it much more appealing, I think. So you don't have to worry as much about the price piece. You still have to worry about the timing piece. Ann and I were talking right before we began this webinar, depending on how you have our system installed and who does the work, you're getting down there close to where you should be doing something fairly serious fairly soon. And we can answer some questions about that if you'd like.
Okay, let me pull up questions. Sorry, I should have had it ready. Here we go. Okay, with the AVST CXE option, does CXE have Skype for Business as part of the package?
We can work with it, but we don't need it. The difference is we don't have to connect a phone call up to Exchange Online. We're simply using the Microsoft APIs. We're currently using the EWS Exchange Web Services API and migrating some of that to the Graph API. So all we need to do is deposit the message. And by the way we deposit the message in Office 365, same way we do it for Exchange Online. And we've been doing this with Office 365 for about 5 years. So I guarantee you there's no other vendor that has the amount of deployments that we do putting messages into Exchange 365, except perhaps Microsoft.
Okay, next, how does the user interface compare to Microsoft?
So there's kind of 2 ways to look at this. I told you they have a custom form and you can use that custom form. And that's a good thing, I guess, because your people are comfortable. When they look at it, they know what to do. They know how to click on the messages and play them, do all those things. And that continues to work, playing them through the speakers. We also have a custom form as an option that you can publish to your users. Has all that same functionality plus a lot more. So our form, once again, our form is older. We've been doing this longer than Microsoft has. And you can do things with our form, like not only control the playback over the telephone, but you can also right-click on a message and automatically call the sender of that message. You can set up a new appointment in Exchange in your calendar and set up how you want your calls to be sent to you. So there's a little drop down that says, while I'm in this meeting, here's the availability status I want, and our system can build custom greetings for that on the fly. So we offer a lot more, but there is a transition where people would have to learn to use ours. I don't think they'd have any problem. I mean, the controls are really the exact same. There's a player bar, and almost anyone's going to know to hit the play button to play the message. So you have those two choices.
Okay. Thanks, Neil. Two-part question here about greetings and auto attendance. Can I upload shared greetings to my auto attendance? And then part two, can I upload pre-recorded greetings to auto attendance and shared mailboxes?
So anything that we have that's an audio file that a caller hears can be uploaded to the system. So if you have a series of, whether they're menu options or anything along those lines, announcement mailboxes, if you have access to that audio in a standard WAV file, then you can go into our administration client and go grab that audio and make it a greeting, an announcement, a menu list, anything you want to do. So our system is extremely open in terms of that.
Okay, another question. Will Skype Online still function as expected with the introduction of AVST?
So Skype Online is one of these things where we have to be careful about that term because it doesn't really mean only one thing. Hybrid mode, where you're using Skype both online and in the cloud, works fine. We connect to the Skype piece that's in the enterprise, somewhat similar to what option 3 is, and we support all users with that. Skype Online kind of also now means using the Cloud PBX, and if you're using the Cloud PBX, then you're off on your own game, and that's a completely different product and very low feature and functionality. You'd really have to look at that on your own.
Okay. Thanks, Neil. Let's see. I'm going to just give it a half second here. It looks like that actually wraps up the questions that were submitted. So we'll give it a second here in case anyone's working on one right now and typing away feverishly. Again, I will mention that we will make these slides available to you. There will be a follow-up thanks for attending email that will go out later today with a link to these slides as well as the recording. And in addition, we always route the questions around internally and have someone here follow up with those of you who attended just to make sure that you got the information you needed and that there's no follow-on questions. So we'll look forward to following up on that. And actually, there is one more question. So I'm going to throw it at you, Neil. Well, we have time. So we have Skype Online for chat and presence. So will this continue to function with AVST?
Yes. If you're not using Skype for your actual phone system, then everything continues to work. And we integrate very tightly with that for a number of solutions. Even if you're just using it for presence and chat, once CX is on your network, you can make outgoing calls by right-clicking any entity in Skype and saying call, and we'll actually make the call using your existing phone system. It doesn't require any licensing on the Skype side at all. And as I mentioned, we'll use your Skype status to control presence in terms of how we route your calls. But yeah, there's no negative impact and the possibility for quite a bit of positive impact.
Okay, thanks again, Neil. All right, everyone, thanks again for joining us. Look for that email with the slides and the recording later today. And we'll also look forward to hopefully seeing you on another one of these webinars in the future. I'll let Neil go ahead and close us out as well.
Thank you, Ann. We do appreciate you taking the time to come, and we also appreciate feedback. At any time, you can get in touch with us at info@avst.com. and you will find us extremely responsive. We'd love to hear what you think of these webinars. If you'd like us to do more, different, longer, shorter, any feedback at all would be appreciated. Everybody have a nice day.
To learn more about AVST, please visit www.avst.com.